Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hi friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to catch up with my friend Marc Beerman, President and CEO of Beerman Precision, located in New Orleans, Louisiana. Beerman Precision is a rental, sales, and service company focused on the industrial construction market. As you will hear, Marc has been at the helm for over 3 decades and has weathered many a storm, both physical and economic. He is an interesting mix of a leader. While he is deeply rooted in financial understanding, Marc is equally passionate about developing people in his organization. He invests in his associates and prides himself on finding ways to help further their career, even if they don't stay with his firm. I always enjoy my conversations with Marc, and I hope you do too. This episode is brought to you by HMI Performance Incentives. Many of us carry credit cards that accumulate points for purchases, or if you're like me, I have the 31 flavors of airline and hotel loyalty memberships. In today's economic environment, distributors need to invest in innovative sales and marketing strategies. Whether you're targeting a new market segment, territory, or just looking to enhance the spend with existing customers, HMI can help you design a program to fit your specific needs. You can learn more about HMI performance incentives at www.hmiaward.com or connect with them on LinkedIn at HMI Performance Incentives. Be sure to let them know you heard about them from me, Jason Bader, on the Distribution Talk podcast. All right. Well, hey, Marc, welcome to Distribution Talk. Thanks for taking the time to be with me.
Thank you for having me.
You and I have known each other quite a while, long time, and attempted skiing many years ago. So give me a little bit about your background. How did you get involved with the distribution industry, Beerman in general? Give us a little history lesson.
So the company was founded by my dad quite a few years ago. We're not even sure if it was 1947 or 1948. Frankly, because when he started, he had a full-time job at night. He had a night job. And then during the day, he opened up what he considered at the time a machine shop. He was a machinist and he was opening up a machine shop.
So this was supposed to be his side hustle, right? This was his side gig.
Well, it was actually, he wanted it to be his main gig. So he took a full-time nighttime job and he worked from, I don't know, let's say from 9 o'clock at night till 3 o'clock in the morning, or maybe it was 7 at night till 3 in the morning. And he literally would leave that job, go get about 3 hours of sleep, and then go to the company that he was starting. And he did this for 4 years. This was not like just a couple minutes. He did this. Part of the reason it took 4 years is he says to me, when I was a kid, he used to tell me stories. He said, I had no money. I had nothing. So I had to earn an income, take care of a family, and try to open a business. And it was really tough for him.
Sure.
Anyway, he did this for many years. I came along when I was a teenager. I worked in the business. By that time, it had changed quite a bit. And as a teenager, I started working, sweeping floors. I literally, it's like, the old story, Dad starts you off 12 years, now maybe I was 13 years old. I'm sweeping floors and taking garbage out, just doing the usual menial stuff.
Oh, yeah.
No idea that I really was going to ever make this a career. Frankly, I didn't think I liked it at that time because I didn't know what I was doing, but it sure wasn't fun to sweep floors and empty trash. Fast forward, time for me to go to college. I had worked summers at the company, and my dad had a great old lawyer who sat down with me and said, okay, you're getting ready to go off to college. What are you going to do? And I said, well, what do you mean? I'm going to go to school. He says, what are you going to study? I said, I have no idea. I don't even know what college is all about. My dad had not gone to college, so he couldn't give me any advice. But the lawyer could. And he says, well, you need to go get a degree in engineering.
Okay.
And I said, that sounds good. I like engineering. And he said, well, go get a degree in engineering. And then when you're finished, we'll figure out what else you can do. If you're going to come into this business. Frankly, I wasn't sure I wanted to even go into the business because my dad said I could go to college and take any direction I wanted in college. I didn't have to go into the business by any stretch. It's interesting. I had a little bit of chutzpah at the time. I said, let me see your last 3 years of tax returns.
Oh, my.
And if you want me to come into the business, do you make any money? And so I asked him for his personal tax returns and the business financials. is a funny story. I look through these. I'm a kid. I'm
Right.
18 years old, right?
Right.
I still was like, I'm making a career decision here. So I look over, and not that I really understood what I was looking at, although you can look at a tax return and real quick see, hey, there's some money there.
There's money or there's not money. It's a pretty simple, yeah.
And so I was like, wow, he makes pretty damn good money. And I said, maybe I could find a way to live in this business, right?
Yeah.
So after studying that, not only did I decide to go into business, I asked my dad, and you'll find this funny. I said, why do you say we're broke all the time if you make this kind of money? And he laughed and he says, don't let tax returns fool you. Sometimes you make money on paper, but you have no cash. So
sure.
He said it's complicated, but he also was a very frugal person, so you would have never known he ever made any money.
Sure.
When I finished the engineering degree, I realized after working in the business a bit, I don't know anything about business. So I went back to school and got a degree in finance. I went back.
There you go.
Thought, I really need to understand more about accounting and finance.
Sure.
Went and got a degree in finance and then came into the business thereafter.
Mark, speaking of that finance piece, that's something that I see so often now. Because, I've been out for about 18 years now, and I see all these companies, and boy, they can sell their brains out. They can sell anything but boy, when it comes to managing money and understanding how to manage money, I think some of the most successful entities that I've run across have had some sort of financial training, whether it is finance from that, or they came out of the banking community for a while, or they did something, maybe an accounting firm. But no, I think that was a great choice for sure.
Yeah, I mean, looking back in hindsight, I thought it was an important step for my progress in really understanding how to run a business.
Yeah.
And more importantly, understanding truly how financials work.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of business owners that I know, they don't understand their financials at all.
Right.
And that's a big problem because it leaves you with a hole if you don't really understand how your cash flows work and you don't know how to do some simple analysis to make sure that you're actually, you can feel like you're making money and not be making money. You don't have a way of looking at your financials to understand it. But anyway, so I got a degree in finance, came into the business in the mid 1980s. And interestingly enough, I came into the business just as we were crashing. The oil industry, we were very heavily involved in oil industry related business. Mm-hmm. And the oil industry in the early to mid 80s collapsed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it was a trial by fire. It was a hard time. And one of the things I learned quickly, I had to learn quickly, and luckily, like I said, I studied finance. When the bottom started to drop out, the first thing I told my dad we needed to do to survive is to stop buying inventory. I said, we need to be cash rich, inventory lean. I said, because demand is drying up. We want to be sitting on cash for at least a period of time so that when things do turn around, we have enough capital to make it through. And so we only bought the most bare minimum of inventory we needed. We want to turn our inventory super, super fast. And our people were told, you don't buy it unless it's going to be in and out of the door within 35 to 50 days. And if you could predict that, you bought it. If you couldn't predict that, you didn't buy it.
Interesting.
So we ended up learning that, yes, having cash at that time really made a big difference.
You bet, for sure.
And it did carry us for about the 3 or 4 years it took for it to turn around. It actually didn't fully turn around until 1990 for us. And in 1990, we had a major turnaround in the economy, and we started finally growing again and turned the business around. That was a trial by fire for me.
For sure, Mark. I mean, I step back and think about this. A lot of folks, again, they get in that cash crunch position. Banks are very nice to them. They aren't that friendly, and they don't really want to. Well, for example, they'll pull your line of credit, or they will give you some new terms that are kind of onerous. But it sounds to me like you all put yourself in a position where coming out of it, you were able to attract those relationships.
We were. And actually, it's funny. I want to say an old banker friend of mine said, look, I'm going to give you some banker advice. Get your money when you don't need it.
Yeah.
Get your borrowings and even though you may not actually need the money at the moment, have the money in place to get to.
Yep.
And do so in advance of the need when you're doing well. You never want to go ask for money when you're not doing it.
Absolutely.
Like you said, the bankers aren't as friendly when you're not doing it.
No. It's like, if you're losing money and there's no cash in the business, What's the incentive on their side?
And frankly, today we're in a situation where the banks can't find good people to loan money to. So if you're in any kind of business that you have an opportunity to lock in some money, it's not a bad time to do it.
Right.
Not saying you have to take the money, but you want to possibly lock it in.
A line established and you draw at will.
Right. And make it a little onerous for them to pull it. Not that they can't, because they always find their loopholes to pull your money if they really want. Fast forward, we did well. We changed computer systems in the 90s, and that was a big deal for us to grow. We added some branches as we went along, and again, that was a big learning curve. One of the things you learn how much more complex business can be when you add locations and you have people who are working that you have, and this is before you had a lot of technology to be able to tell what people are doing really. And you had no idea if your people were getting any positive things done, except maybe a phone call here and there. So things have changed a lot. Today, we have a lot more visibility in the activities of our employees.
Sure.
And we are able, with so many remote access capabilities, we can train people remotely now in so many different ways. We even use a technology here with our remote people where if our people need to learn how to do something inside of our ERP system, we shadow them on the computer and we literally are on their desktop showing them what to do. So you can train people remotely now like never before. It's just amazing. And that's just one little example.
It is amazing from where you and I came from, that capability. Because I remember when you did do when you went over to Prof 21 and you went down that trail. I remember, and then those locations, a VPN. What do you mean a VPN? What's this? Or a T1 line? Those things like that. Yeah, going deep.
Yeah, are there even T1 lines today?
I do not know, and I don't think so. And I'll tell you, Mark, I left that IT side.
Yeah, I think everything is fiber now. It's all fiber.
I think it is.
That's funny. That is funny. I forgot that term. So that's, I guess, I call it a short-term history of me being in the business. Yeah. In the mid 90s to late 90s, I got very involved with STAFTA.
Yeah.
And along the way, somehow, I don't exactly know how, this guy, Maury Halverson, who was the executive director, saw my name or saw something about me, and he called me on the phone and said, I want you to come on the board. And I was, again, a pretty young guy, and I thought, wow, that sounds interesting. And I did. I said, I'd like to be involved. I've always felt like, number one, you learn tremendous amounts from being around people who know a lot more than you. The world is filled with expertise, and the surprising part is how people within an industry group are willing to help each other.
Absolutely.
They're so willing to share their knowledge, their experiences, and so on. And I found that with STAFTA, and then I got on the board and I got to meet some really, really smart folks. I felt like it was a great turning point kind of in my career and in my life. And one of the things that I remember from, I think, the first or second board meeting I attended, I was, again, a youngster, but I asked questions about why they did things the way they did them. Mm-hmm. Not because I was criticizing, I just didn't understand. They seemed to me to be not necessarily wrong, but maybe there might be other ways to look at things. I always feel like sometimes people are afraid to ask questions. Yeah. And we learn by asking hard questions, my opinion.
And Mark, remember, I mean, you and I were both the youngest guys in the room when we were entering those organizations, and it can be intimidating. It's like, well, they've been doing this for at the time, probably like 25, 26 years. And there was good reason for it. We just wanted to ask the question, why? Why do you do it this way?
Right. I remember a couple of times, this guy, Maury, who's a great guy, but I could tell he looked at me and thought, this young guy is asking pointed questions that are making people uncomfortable. And I thought, well, that's it. I'm done. They're going to throw me off the board.
You're going to get the boot.
Long story short, a few years later, Maury called me and said, I want you to become president of STAFTA, which was shocking to me because I thought I've shaken things up and I thought they wouldn't like that. But it ends up Maury was a lot more open to being questioned.
Yeah.
So I've been active in STAFTA pretty much all my life.
Yeah.
Frankly. And when I say active, I went through the board, became the president, stayed active for many years. I'm still active. I still go every year and see a lot of the people. And I still learn a lot from a lot of people. What is refreshing to me is to see some young people coming in.
Sure.
We need more of that, frankly. We're getting a little long in the tooth. And,
Yeah.
and
Yes, we are, sir.
those of us we were the youngsters then, and it's hard to believe now we're becoming the seniors.
Yeah.
And it changes your outlook, and you realize you need the young blood. And I think that's a challenge in our industry, in my opinion.
For sure. No. You're absolutely correct. Yeah, it's something I've talked to others about pretty heavily is that I feel like distribution's got this PR problem that we don't attract as well as we probably should or could. I mean, hey, let's face it, you've had a very nice career in this business, and there are a lot of really phenomenal careers made inside of the distribution, notwithstanding just the staff aside, but really in all walks of distribution there's great careers to be had. How do you sell that better? Because I think that we're just not selling it or going out and attracting it the way we should be.
Well, I agree, and I mean, I think part of it is yes, it's hard to attract because we're not a visible industry. We're kind
Right.
of a behind the scenes industry. And let's face it, when you have these visible industries out there who, frankly, some of them, I mean, you start talking about the high tech companies who
Yep.
are hiring up people by the thousands. It's hard for us to recruit talent when these other guys, number one, they have very deep pockets, but number two, they're sexy. Our
Yes.
problem
Yeah.
is we're not as sexy as they are. And so,
We're boxes in, boxes out, man. I mean,
yeah, for
we're
us,
transactional.
yeah,
Yeah,
we're transactional. There's strategic, there's marketing, and so on.
absolutely.
I think one of the things that our industry, at least I'd say the staff to a large degree, some of the other types of hard goods industries are lagging is we have yet to really, in my opinion, really turn the corner and become much more e-commerce focused. Consequently, we're not pulling in talent that it requires to do that kind of business.
Right.
And there are a handful who have done superbly well at it.
Yes.
But I think even some of the big guys out there have lagged, if you will, in embracing e-commerce. Certainly the smaller guys are challenged.
Well, yeah. And I think, Mark, there was a perception that you needed to be of size in order to do this, in order to take on that challenge. And I guess I would beg to differ that I have seen some companies that, might be in that 10 to $20 million range do extraordinarily well because they understood what they were trying to do. They really became laser focused on what am I trying to achieve with this? Is it going to be replace an outside salesperson? I don't want to say necessarily replace, but they will look at it like, for example, one would look at it as a branch location, or one would look at it as a sales territory, this e-commerce platform, and they've become very smart with it. So I think it's a lot of it is in between the ears of that owner or leadership team, that if you're in it, you can achieve success, but you can also be afraid of it too.
I'm not saying there aren't some folks who've embraced it and done very well. I think there are plenty who have.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think that it needs to be almost the norm as opposed to the handful who've done very well.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm guilty of not participating in it to the extent that we should have. And I feel like there is opportunity for smaller companies to play.
Yeah.
I think more of us should be focused on how to segue into that segment. But that comes back to you got to bring in a different kind of talent to do that.
Agreed.
You got to bring in people who are not necessarily sales focused. They're focused on how to put an infrastructure together, how to put a web infrastructure together. And it's a lot more I'll call it brainiac work than it is routine or
pounding the pavement. And
right. Yeah. So, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for those of us who embrace that technology to grow our businesses and bring in talent in that segment.
Very true. And I think that one of the barriers I've seen, because this has come up quite a bit in my practice recently, as we've talked a lot about recruiting and looking and retaining for that matter. One of the big challenges is, well, where do I look and how do I pitch? And I said, well, I think going back to that pitch is really important, asking the question, what are you offering? The wage that you're throwing and a warm place to sleep at night, that isn't going to cut it anymore. I mean, you've got to have an actual pitch. What is the value proposition to that candidate out there? Why would they come choose Beerman Precision? And I think there's an area of focus that I would love to see distributors embrace that.
Yeah, I mean, all of us I think we're all faced with the question, what makes us a valuable place for someone to make a career?
Yeah.
Can they map out a career and enjoy it? We have to be able to articulate why people like to be in this business, which is it's a little more difficult to do these days because the places you go to post your job postings, it's all electronic. So the face that they see is just this verbiage on the screen, and it's not necessarily a one-to-one thing, at least not in the beginning. But once you do get face-to-face with people, if you decide you found yourself a good candidate, it's interesting. I see the role reverses. You go from them trying to sell you that they're the right candidate for the job to now you're trying to sell them that you're the right company for them to accept a position. I think in today's market, we're much more in the place of we have to sell them.
Absolutely, Mark.
It's harder to find the people today.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think you just hit it right there, is that we do have to sell. And look, we should be good at selling. That's what distributors do. But we just have to learn to sell the company and why you should work there, not necessarily a product from the shelf.
Right. And also it depends on your philosophy. I mean, a lot of companies, we would be a company that would, if we had a preference, we would prefer to train someone sort of from the ground up.
Sure.
But those days are almost over. It's really hard to take someone in and groom them for multiple years. Most people want to start right in the middle or near the top if they really have some talent. I think part of the challenge, and we do it here, we try to map out basically a potential career path. We always tell any candidate, here's where we can start you, but here's a potential career path for you. If you start in this position, you could go to the left or to the right and ultimately end up in this type of position if that suits your personality and what you like to do. And different people have different focuses. They have different ideas of what they want to do. I have to admit, I've taken some really good inside salespeople and put them outside, and they failed miserably because their nature was not set up to do outside sales. They were exceptional on the inside. And so we have to be a little bit careful when we're mapping out a career path for somebody that we understand their personality and what they want first.
Mark, that's a great point because I can literally write down names of people that I did the same thing with and lost them and they were fantastic people. And they went on to do excellent, have excellent careers elsewhere. And that was great. But it's always that pang of regret, that guilt and regret that I tried to shove them into a path that they just weren't comfortable in and never were suited for, didn't fit their personality. Look, let's face it, outside sales is not for everybody. There's a certain personality type mentality that it works for.
Right, exactly. And oftentimes it conflicts with an inside salesperson.
It does.
I'm faced with it right now. I had one person who was my top inside salesperson I put outside, and I'm literally getting ready to try to convince this person to come back in and be our inside sales manager in our main location. And this isn't even public knowledge right now, but I'm getting ready to do this. It's because the person is so good, but they're in the wrong slot, in my opinion.
So to the point, Mark, I mean, it would be fantastic if we could figure out that slotting or figure out that path before we get ourselves into this pickle, that you're in right now. And one of the things that I've been working with different people on is personality testing and things like that earlier on in their career path and creating diverging paths, because some people might be better suited to go into the purchasing, finance side, accounting side, administrative side, and really excel there. But why should they have to go through the outside ranks to come back in there? So there has to be this diverging path somehow. And I think that's an important one to do.
Well, and it's funny you talk about that. Years ago, we embraced the idea of doing some personality testing. And I have to admit, it's like any cycle. We went through a cycle of doing it regularly, and then we cycled away from it. But I think in a way, it's a mistake. We should cycle back to it.
I agree.
To understand our people a little better. As they've grown and matured, they're changing. We're very lucky. We have a relatively low turnover rate in our company. But by the same token, we also need some new blood to come in and shake things up a little bit, frankly. We know we need it. I'm getting ready to hire a few people, and I'm hoping to find some younger people to come in and bring some freshness to the place. But when you're hiring young people, you have to give them an idea of what the future might hold for them. And that brings me to basically how do we embrace their concept of learning and understanding this industry and the way to go about excelling in this industry. I belong to a trade organization, I'd say a buying group called Evergreen Marketing.
Yep.
I know you're very familiar with.
Yes, sir.
And Evergreen has, at least when they started, they had a unique concept out there in which training their employees, the employees of all the members, was a core focus of the group.
Yes.
And I have to say, I don't know whose idea it was, but it was a genius idea. And they force members, if you will, they give you a bucket of money that you only have access to for training. And they force members to use that bucket of money to train. And if you don't use it, you lose it. I think it's a fantastic idea.
I do too, especially because I'm a recipient of that bucket of money. So I
Right, exactly.
I have to say, Mark, that's a great idea. I'm down with that.
I would imagine you're not against that idea. But that's
not at all.
But frankly, it's a win-win, as you well know. And employees who are going to grow, they want to know that they're not only are they going to grow because they're doing a good job internally, but they're going to grow because they're going to be given a path to gain greater understanding, greater knowledge over time. And no company can train employees in-house the way that an external force could, in my opinion, because we're not a training institution.
Right.
We do our training, we bring in factory reps, we do a variety of different types of training programs. But the truth is, sending someone off not only to get trained, but to, again, give them a path in training in which along the way they're getting recognized for reaching a higher level. And that's what Evergreen has done. They give people a path to getting certified. And I think it's been a great way to energize our industry, I guess is the way I'll put it.
No, and I would agree with you, Mark. But one thing that's just come up for me and thinking about this, is this part of your pitch? When you are trying to sell this new candidate, do you talk about, hey, we have also invested in this Evergreen Marketing Group, and the reason we are attracted to it is because of its training and education program? Is that part of your pitch?
That's the reason I brought it up. It is
perfect. Perfect.
It is 100% part of the pitch. And again, it depends on the path. I mean, if I'm hiring somebody from my accounting department, that might not be important. But if it's anything to do with sales or logistics, management even,
yes,
because Evergreen has grown their offering to the point where they train branch managers, they train people in operations. Yes. It's beyond just salespeople, is my point.
Yeah.
Which, again, I think is very important. So we have a bigger scope of people who would fit into that pitch. And it is part of it. It's a big part of it to be able to promise someone, hey, we're going to, not only are you going to come in and learn the business internally, but we're going to put you through a process that's going to allow you to gain a lot more knowledge in our industry. And I have to say, it's been a great win for many of our employees, but it also was a win, believe it or not, for some employees who didn't stay with us. I have an employee who's a great guy. He went through multiple Evergreen training. He was assistant manager at one of my branches. And we had this horrific thing come along many years ago called Katrina, which was a hurricane.
Oh, I remember, sir. I do.
And it wreaked havoc on our city and our community. And this guy, he had some damage to his property. More importantly, he had a bunch of young kids. And with the disruption we had in our society, it's hard to explain to people how disruptive this can be. But your school systems are completely turned. It's like COVID, if you will. We all know how disruptive COVID was. Yeah. Well, it's like taking COVID, but to a different degree. And his life got turned upside down because his kids' school became unbearable. His neighborhood was people packed in from all over, from parts of the city, and there's crime in his neighborhood. There are a lot of things going on that he didn't like. And his wife gave him an ultimatum and said, I'm moving to Texas. You can come with me and the kids or stay. And he came to me and said, look, I love my wife. I love my kids. I've got to move to Texas. Yeah. Well, he went to Texas after having all the training and went to work for another Evergreen member there who I helped him get the job. And then he's thrived. He's thrived. He runs their, right now at the moment, most successful location of this distribution company. And he's their branch manager. And my point is who knows where the end result will be. But sure. I'm happy to say that it started with both him coming and learning our industry here and for his experience through the evergreen process. It gave him a path. We all know we're not all going to get lucky enough to keep every employee we put through a path. We know it.
Very true.
But you can use even a path that doesn't result in the end result you want in your company to say it's still good for your employees. And it's a good pitch for them to say, hey, even if you don't make a career with us, you're going to get benefit from your time here.
Yep. No, and I think, Mark, that's exactly what somebody wants to hear, that you are willing to invest in them regardless of the ultimate outcome.
Right.
You will invest with them and you will help them, because that's just what we do. That is just, that makes us good managers. It makes us good employers. It's, hey, we just want the best for the people that come with us for the period of time they're with us. And then if they go elsewhere, we wish them the best of luck. No hard feelings.
Yeah, no. And again, you never know. It's an interesting thing. You never know how things are going to, there's an old saying, man plans, God laughs.
Yeah.
If you think you can predict the future, you're mistaken.
Yes.
I've had people leave my employ who ultimately went to work for a customer and became a management staff or in a purchasing position, and we benefited greatly because our relationship remained good with those folks. But again, it's still worth the investment. It's worth giving them the career path, even if there's a risk to us. And that's something you hear from a lot of business owners. Oh, well, it doesn't pay to try to train people or get them up to speed. They're just going to leave you anyway. And I don't espouse that concept. I feel like there's a greater risk of doing nothing. There's a greater risk of not giving that path to them if you want good quality people.
Absolutely. No, I think that's absolutely correct, Mark. It's interesting. One thing you said earlier, if I just want to jump back on it, we talked about the difficulty in that attraction because it tends to be on these job posting, or it tends to be on a screen, or you're competing against other postings. And I was recently working with some marketing people and talking about this recruiting and how do you get yourself noticed? And they talked about really stepping back and focusing on what they were posting up there. And how do I get company culture on a job ad? And that's something that was really, it was kind of enlightening. And so I think the people that shared, they said that they focused on getting maybe some of the younger members of the organization to contribute in and to create more colorful postings and talking more about culture and what does it feel like in a day at Beerman Precision and that type of thing. And so they were able to differentiate themselves a little bit, but it's hard for guys like you and me because that's just not our world. We're great face-to-face. We can sell face-to-face, but we have a more difficult time when we have to play in this Indeed or these different mediums.
Right. Like I said, I'm getting ready to post for a few positions. And I have to admit, I feel a little bit out of my element because I'm actually going to be the one to go in there and look around to try to determine how we're going to do it. Because my HR person, unfortunately, left our employee. So guess who's doing that? I'm going to have to do this right now. I don't want to wait for someone else to do it. So I said, I'll take it over. Well, I've looked at Indeed. I have posted on Indeed in the past, but there's a lot to know. In the old days, this is funny, but in the old days, you put an ad in the paper. I don't know if
yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But in the old days, you put something in a want ad in the newspaper, and you paid by the word.
Yep.
So you had to be really concise, otherwise you spent a lot of money because the newspapers were a monopoly then.
Yep.
And you had to be very concise. So you tried to give as much information as you could and as little verbiage as you could.
Right.
And so therefore, it couldn't give anything about culture.
No, not at all.
There was no way to share all of this information. So, you could say, well, things certainly have improved, but that also means that to compete, you have to change your way. You have to find a way to be attractive to these people. It'll be interesting for me to see what kind of responses we get.
Sure.
I know that we did a hire in one of our other locations in the Alabama market. And my guy posted something and he had someone hired in 3 days. He posted something it was on Indeed. And we were very pleased with that, frankly, because we didn't expect it to be not only not that quick, but that we found a good candidate with good experience. Of course, that can be a needle in a haystack. At the same time, I will tell you, we tried 2 different agencies in that market to find someone. The agency sent us people who, in one case, the person showed up day one and didn't show up day two. In another case, the person, this is again through an agency that we thought was doing the vetting for us, and the person only made it to work on time day one. After that, for the next week and a half, they didn't make it to work on time. My guy finally said that won't work for us. But right. So my point is, agencies are not necessarily your best avenue. These online portals. What online portals are you familiar with that you think work?
That's the only one that comes up often. And the other thing, Mark, and again, my thought would be, frankly, reach out to your friends at Evergreen, reach out to other and ask them. And I saw something on LinkedIn, and I just wanted to bring this up. So I'm going to go ahead and throw their name out. It was Total Tool. I just happened to see a LinkedIn, we're hiring coming out, but it was so creative. The young lady who put together this ad, she brought in a lot of the Minnesota culture and all of these little expressions and sayings, and it was hysterical. It was so funny. And I think that's really what we're looking for, is you're looking for someone who could bring in your culture in verbiage and in some sort of ad posting. And so I think that's kind of the bucket you're looking for. But if I could share one more thought, is employee referrals tend to be one of the things that people really talked about in my group we're discussing, is that they really believe that providing and creating employee referral programs was one of the best ways, because they're a whole lot cheaper than the recruiting services that you work with.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's funny because as you say that, we've been around so long. I've tried different things. I haven't tried the employee referral in a number of years, where you give rewards to your people. If you end up hiring someone, you give them some form of reward. Yeah. Actually, now that you mention it, now that we're talking about it, with these 3 postings I'm getting ready to do, I'm going to reach out to our own people and offer to give them an incentive, because it's interesting. I actually did hire somebody recently through a referral, another employee of ours. They actually did not directly refer the person to us. They were speaking to a good friend of theirs who then referred the person to us. Yeah. But still, it was an indirect referral. Sure. And this person's worked out great. But yeah, I didn't think about it, but I think that might be one way to try to find some talent, is have our people talk to people they know. Yes. And ask those people to talk to people they know. The key is, and that's where social media is so valuable to a degree. Yeah. If you just depend on people to talk to someone and then talk to someone else, in this day and age, that's harder. But if people if they post things on social media, it catches fire.
That's force multiplier, man. That's exactly what it is.
I think what we may do is, again, go to our own people, ask them, not just to talk to your friends, but maybe to go out to your Facebook sphere. Yep. And say, hey, my company's blah, 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 blah. And my friends, I'd say keep it in your friend groups. But, my friends know someone or want to repost to some of their friends. We're looking. And that might be a great way to network.
Yeah, that's another thing that had come up, that some of these companies actually provide a small incentive if they repost this on their own personal social feeds and things like that. So there's a lot of ways to get your employees involved in this process. It's everybody's hiring. Everybody is the HR, not just Mark. I mean, this is everybody's out hunting. And I think referral programs work really, really well. The ones I've seen that work pretty successfully are that there will be a small monetary hit if the person stays for 90 days, right, and then a greater monetary hit if they stay for a full year. So it's a 2-tier is what I've seen is most effective, but you can put it together, see what your folks respond to. And
I like it. And I'm going to try it, because I think that could be as successful as anything else, maybe more so. And frankly, more fun. I think it could be more fun for our people.
Agreed. Why am I paying a bunch of money to an outside service when I can share that money with my employees? With my associates? Why can't I spread the wealth internally? And I think that's always what we're trying to find.
Yeah, I agree. Very good.
Well, hey, my friend, we've been rolling along here for a bit, and I think I got to wrap this up. It's always such a pleasure to chat with you. And I'm sorry I missed you last week. I really wanted to get a chance, but I will be back in New Orleans, and I will definitely see you.
Please let me know. I love to see you. Love to catch up, and great talking to you. And you have a great day.
All right, you too. Be well. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider hitting that subscribe button. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area on your podcast application or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by Andrea Klunder and Edwin Ruiz at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, The Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.